Howdy everyone, this is Matt Duren and I'm glad you joined me for Shiloh's online Bible class today. We're going to be discussing the current pandemic and I'll allow you some time to reflect on that as we go through the lesson. We're in this place where our lives have been turned upside down and they're changed so drastically that we don't really know what to do with it. And the media is telling us all these different things. And we'll tie this into the first chapter of James. And if any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault. At the end, I'll tell you about a time in my life that I think may be helpful for the situation today. The pictures that you're seeing are from that time. Thanks for joining me. Let's get started. So I thought of a jarring situation that I think just really happened to fit this well, the current pandemic well. Back, I don't know how old I was, but I was in early years of high school, and I was attending Camp Duren. You'll hear me tell stories about Duren all the time. It was one of my favorite places. But they have a big swing at Duren. If you're familiar with it, it's up in a big oak tree. There's a wooden platform up there, and there's a chain that comes down, and you just kind of get strapped into the chain with your harness, and then you're able to swing off through the woods. It's a lot of fun. Well, it was my first time to do the swing. And so when I went up, the counselor failed to tell me, and honestly, she probably didn't need to tell me. I probably should have known that when I go off the platform, I need to make sure I lean backwards. Well, I didn't do that. I leaned forward and just sort of fell off the platform, and many of you probably know what happened. The chain that was holding me, it snapped when my weight caught it, and it popped me right in the eye. And let me tell you, I think it knocked me out for a second or two. I know I came back to and was swinging, and all the guys were cheering, "Yeah, go Matt." My cabin was there, and they wanted me to do some kind of flip and go upside down. And I remember just thinking, I don't know what is going on right now. And so finally, I just kind of reluctantly flipped over upside down and just hung there. And they're trying to talk to me, and I really couldn't talk back. I remember I didn't have any words to speak back to them. But they keep telling me these things to do, and I'm just trying to comply because I don't know what else to do. I've been knocked senseless. I went the rest of the day with, this may have been very bad if you're a medical person, I don't know. I had a cloudy spot over my right eye and just felt so sleepy the rest of the afternoon. Ended up taking a nap, but it was all okay. It all worked out in the end. But it was quite a jarring experience, and I feel like that's where many of us are right now today. We're in this place where our lives have been turned upside down and they're changed so drastically that we don't really know what to do with it. And the media is telling us all these different things. Some people say we're blowing this out of proportion. It's not that serious. Some say it's very serious. We need to be very concerned. So we don't know who to listen to. I know that within my own family, I hear a wide range of opinions over this. And so in this, we've all sort of become reactionary because we don't know what to do. So voices are hitting us left and right, and we're just doing the best we can to function at the best we know how in the current situation. And so within that, we just started reacting, sort of like I did when I just started flipping upside down. I didn't know what else to do. Just did it because they told me to. There's a lot of things to be taken away from this passage here. I think you could sit and think on it for quite a while, especially just the first line. Consider it pure joy that you're going through this trial. I don't think that is most of our reaction to what's currently happening. But there's all sorts of other good things in there. I want to go down towards the end first and start talking about the confidence that James calls us to have, that we don't doubt, that we believe, and that we trust in God. In some ways, maybe because of my human nature, I tend to begin to read this as a self-assurance thing. Like, I need to be assured in myself that it's going to be all okay, and that I can figure it out, and the things that I'm doing are going to work, and I just need to pray and ask God, and it's going to keep working. That's just kind of the way our minds work. We tend to trust in ourselves first, but James is telling us the exact opposite here. He's telling us to put our faith in God, and that's the core of this passage here, and in everything that we trust God for wisdom. And so where I think this really, really sticks for me is it's so difficult in a time like this to become reactionary, right? We talked about that earlier, that we just start doing what we can to make sense of the world around us, and that we do what we can to find some normalcy in what we're doing now. For example, many of us are supposed to just stay home and relax. And I've seen many friends and people around me just get busier. And I think in some ways they're just trying to find that sense of normalcy in their lives. And so that's the kind of confidence we're not talking about here. The kind of confidence we're talking about here is trusting in God and in His wisdom, and taking those moments to ask God for wisdom, to spend some time in prayer and reflection over the current situation. And I think that if we do that, if we have that faith and we trust God for wisdom, I think He will give it to us. That's what James tells us here. We can be confident that He gives generously, even during a trial, even during a time of crisis. And that generosity is such a key thing for us to hold on to as faithful Christians. In 2014, I went to Papua New Guinea. I've told many of you about that, and I spent 6 weeks there. And if you know anything about New Guinea, it has a very, very different culture. It's one of the few places in the world where you can still find cultures that they consider very similar to a Stone Age culture. Very, very ancient practices and very far removed from Western society. So it's very interesting to go there and experience the differences in culture. Just a few things. An interesting one. Men there would hold hands with one another that were friends. And it didn't mean anything other than you were friends. And so often in New Guinea, I would find myself walking along, and one of the men who traveled with us throughout the entire 6 weeks would come up and grab my hand. And if you think that was strange, the stranger part for me was once he grabbed my hand, I didn't know the rules that guided this. So am I supposed to let go, or is he supposed to let go? If I let go a little too early, what signal am I sending? Is that going to offend him in some way? The confusion that was around that. There was also things like they talked a little slower, listened a little longer, didn't interrupt each other, spoke a little softer. Not like us here in the U.S. We often interrupt one another. We listen to the person who talks the loudest and talk fairly fast at times. So it was quite a drastic change to go over to New Guinea and experience that. And I expected that when I went over there. It was jarring, and for a while I was just reacting and doing my best in the current situation. But it wasn't the hardest part about the trip. The hardest part about going to New Guinea was coming back to the United States. And I didn't expect this at all. My expectation when I came back to the U.S. was that things would be just as normal. They would be the way they were when I left. And in a lot of ways, I was right. They were. But what I didn't realize was that I had changed. I had changed a lot while I was in New Guinea. And I didn't come back and start trying to hold anyone's hand, but when I came back, I did talk a little slower and softer because I'd been around that. And it made it more difficult to communicate with the people around me. In New Guinea, people walked slower. They didn't walk, no one walked as fast as we walk here. And so when I came back here, just simply walking from one class to another with someone else felt strange because they seemed in such a hurry to get off to somewhere. The point that I'm trying to make is that when I came back to what I thought was normal, it wasn't normal. And I predict the same is going to be true with this pandemic. So seeing that it's going to last for 6 to 8 weeks, maybe a little longer, it's going to be a long enough time to really change the way all of us behave and think and live. And so the normal, while it's going to be normal, all of us are going to have changed. And so when we go back into that time, and when we go back to meet with one another again at church and go back to our jobs at work, and whenever the kids get to go back to school, it's not going to be quite the same as it was before. And it's going to be a jarring experience as well. And so I want to encourage you that just as James encourages us to do here, to begin seeking God's wisdom now, taking time to step out and reflect on what's going on around us, because there is so much we're getting hit with right now that we can't really get a sense of where we are, and we need those pauses throughout the day to seek God's wisdom in everything that we do. And we need to build that habit now, because when normal comes, it's not going to quite be normal, and we're going to need those times, and we're going to need God's wisdom again. And so building those daily habits are becoming even more important. They already are, but this is a great time when we're all shaken up and we're trying to find something to cling to this, to cling to prayer and to God's word, and to cling to one another. That to our Christian brothers and sisters, because that is what all of us need right now in so many different ways. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate getting to spend this time and getting to share with you. I hope that's beneficial in some way, and I cannot wait for us to all be back together again. It's been too long already, and we've got a long ways to go. I love you all and miss you. Thanks.